You finish a long day, sit on the couch, and realize you have absolutely no drive to do anything. Even normal, low-effort activities feel intensely boring. The world blurs past, and you're just stuck in a state of scrolling paralysis. Looking at this readout, you can see exactly how this modern malaise manifests. Low motivation, fragmented focus, chronic procrastination, a complete intolerance for quiet moments, and anhedonia, when your favorite hobbies suddenly stop feeling rewarding. This cluster of symptoms is a predictable biological response to the environment we live in, occurring independently of personal willpower or laziness. The internet has a very popular explanation for this fatigue. Viral videos claim that constant screen time permanently destroys your brain's dopamine receptors, and that the only way to survive is an extreme dopamine detox. This chart contrasts those viral claims with clinical reality. Severe addiction can down-regulate receptors, but everyday tech use rarely causes actual permanent receptor loss. The pop science diagnosis is biologically overstated, and as this graphic shows, the solution isn't to lock yourself in a dark room for a weekend. There is no accepted clinical intervention that precisely restores brain receptors on a fixed 48-hour schedule. You cannot starve your brain back to health. The root of the problem is an automated environment engineered to systematically bypass your conscious executive control. This table breaks down a crucial biological distinction. We often confuse the feeling of liking something with the drive of wanting it. They run on completely different chemical systems. Liking is driven by opioids and endocannabinoids, creating a feeling of satisfaction and rest. Dopamine strictly drives the wanting column. It is a learning and motivation signal. It triggers anticipation and pursuit. It's the pull to pick up the phone when it vibrates, not the enjoyment of actually looking at it. Looking at this graph of the reward prediction error, we see how the brain calculates that motivation. Predictable rewards yield a flat, boring response. But an unexpected or unpredictable reward creates a massive dopamine spike. That spike forces the brain to pay attention and learn the behavior. Digital platforms understand this math perfectly. Every feature, from the pull-to-refresh mechanism to algorithmic feeds, is engineered to deliver unpredictable rewards, exploiting this exact biological mechanism to keep you perpetually seeking. This illustration of the biological tug-of-war shows exactly where that seeking happens. On the left is the ventral tegmental area, or VTA. Think of this as your brain's engine for primitive drive. It constantly scans the environment for novelty and demands instant gratification. On the right is the prefrontal cortex, your executive control tower. It is responsible for sustaining focus, delaying gratification, and executing long-term decisions. Maintaining attention on any difficult task requires a delicate, constant balance between these two regions. The prefrontal cortex has to actively suppress the impulses coming from the VTA. But modern digital environments weaponize hyper-frequent cues to tip this balance entirely in favor of the VTA. When you are bombarded by constant stimuli, your prefrontal cortex simply loses its structural ground. This notification funnel diagrams exactly how apps break your focus. It starts with a constant stream of cues, a buzz, a badge, a ping. Each notification implies potential novelty, creating an unresolved open loop in your working memory. Because of that unpredictability we saw earlier, this open loop triggers a sharp dopamine spike purely from the anticipation of checking the alert. That chemical spike cascades into an automatic physical action. Your hand reaches for the phone and swipes down before you even register what you're doing. This entire sequence executes in milliseconds. It forces a behavior before your prefrontal cortex can consciously grant permission. Your autonomy is bypassed completely. To fix this, you have to actively rebuild your control tower. This behavioral remodeling map outlines a two-part strategy: starving the triggers and strengthening the system. First, you must secure the biological baseline. This graphic of the brain's striatum shows how sleep loss directly attacks dopamine signaling. Without 7 to 8 hours of consistent sleep, receptor availability drops and fatigue sets in. Next is movement. This dial demonstrates how physical activity naturally elevates your baseline dopamine tone. A daily 30-minute phone-free walk or workout provides the chemical availability your brain needs without relying on synthetic digital spikes. You cannot out-willpower a physically exhausted brain. These physical habits are non-negotiable prerequisites for attention. Once the baseline is set, you have to break the automatic funnel. This diagram of structural interruption illustrates the concept of digital friction. By switching to grayscale, moving apps, or using app locks, you force your brain to exert deliberate effort to access a reward. These progressive blocks show how friction acts as resistance training. When you sit with minor discomfort or boredom for 5 minutes in the morning without immediately reaching for a device, you actively strengthen the prefrontal cortex's ability to override impulsive signals. This diagram visualizes mindfulness not as a mystical retreat, but as repetitive cognitive training. Every time your mind wanders and you actively pull it back to the present, you reinforce the neural pathways responsible for self-regulation. Combining environmental friction with attention training systematically dismantles an automated environment and reclaims your biology.